Hey there, you're looking kinda cute. Don't forget to subscribe and check out all my other socials. Enjoy. Steam rose from simmering sauces, filling the air with a rich tapestry of aromas. Amid the controlled chaos, Nikolai stood at his station, brow furrowed in concentration as he meticulously plated a delicate fish dish. His movements were precise, each garnish placed with surgical accuracy. But beneath the calm exterior, a storm raged within. Nikolai's hands trembled slightly as he worked, his mind wandering to places he dared not explore in the light of day. Across the kitchen, Joanna glanced up from her dessert preparation, her keen eyes noting the slight shake in Nikolai's normally steady hands. It wasn't the first time she'd noticed something off about her colleague. Over the past few months, she'd observed a growing unease in Nikolai's demeanor, a sadness that seemed to deepen with each passing day. As the dinner service wound down and the kitchen staff began their nightly cleaning routine, Joanna approached Nikolai's station. He was scrubbing a pan with more force than necessary, his knuckles white around the scouring pad. "Hey," she said softly, not wanting to startle him. "You okay?" Nikolai looked up, his eyes momentarily unfocused before he forced a smile. "Fine," he replied, his voice gruff. "Just tired, I guess." Joanna leaned against the counter, arms crossed. "You've seemed distracted lately. Is everything all right at home?" A flicker of something, panic, shame, crossed Nikolai's face before he schooled his features. "Everything's fine," he insisted, turning back to his task. "Don't worry about me." But Joanna did worry. She'd known Nikolai for years, had watched him rise through the ranks of the kitchen with his talent and dedication. To see him struggling now with something he clearly couldn't or wouldn't share tugged at her heart. "You know you can talk to me, right?" she pressed gently. "About anything." Nikolai's scrubbing slowed, and for a moment, Joanna thought he might open up. But then he shook his head, as if clearing away unwanted thoughts. "Thanks," he mumbled. "But really, I'm okay." Joanna knew better than to push further. She gave Nikolai's shoulder a gentle squeeze before returning to her own station, her mind whirling with concerns for her friend. The next few weeks passed in much the same manner. Nikolai threw himself into his work with an almost manic intensity, as if trying to outrun his own thoughts. His dishes were flawless, but the joy he'd once found in cooking seemed to have vanished. Joanna watched and waited, looking for an opportunity to break through the walls Nikolai had erected. It came one rainy Tuesday evening, as they were closing up the restaurant together. Nikolai was struggling with the lock on the back door, his frustration mounting as the key refused to turn. Suddenly, he slammed his palm against the metal surface, a strangled sound escaping his throat. Joanna was at his side in an instant. Hey, she soothed, gently taking the keys from his trembling hand. "Let me." As she worked the lock, she heard a sound that made her heart clench, a muffled sob. She turned to find Nikolai with his face buried in his hands, shoulders shaking. Without hesitation, Joanna wrapped her arms around him, feeling the tension in his body. "It's okay," she murmured. "Let it out. I'm here." For a long moment, they stood there in the rain, Nikolai's sobs gradually subsiding into hiccuping breaths. When he finally pulled away, his eyes were red-rimmed and filled with a mixture of shame and relief. "I'm sorry," he whispered, voice hoarse. "I don't know what's wrong with me." Joanna shook her head firmly. "There's nothing wrong with you," she insisted. "But something's clearly bothering you. Please, Nikolai, let me help." He looked at her for a long moment, indecision warring on his face. Then, with a deep breath, he nodded. "Not here," he said quietly. Can we go to your place?" "Of course," Joanna agreed immediately. "Come on, my car's just around the corner." The drive to Joanna's apartment was silent, the only sound the rhythmic swish of windshield wipers against the rain-streaked glass. Nikolai stared out the window, his reflection a pale ghost against the darkness outside. Once inside, Joanna bustled about making tea and gathering blankets. She sensed that Nikolai needed a moment to collect himself, to find the words for whatever was weighing so heavily on his soul. Finally, they settled on her worn but comfortable couch, steaming mugs in hand. Nikolai stared into his tea as if it held the secrets of the universe. "I don't know how to say this," he began haltingly. I've never told anyone." Joanna reached out, placing a reassuring hand on his arm. "Take your time," she encouraged. "I'm not going anywhere." Nikolai took a shuddering breath. "I've always felt different," he said, the words coming slowly at first, then faster as if a dam had broken. "Like I was living in the wrong skin. For years I tried to ignore it, to convince myself it was just a phase or something I'd grow out of. But it's only gotten stronger." He looked up at Joanna, his eyes filled with a mixture of fear and desperate hope. I think I'm supposed to be a woman," he whispered. Joanna felt a wave of understanding wash over her. Suddenly, so many little things she'd noticed about Nikolai over the years clicked into place. The discomfort he seemed to feel in his own body. The way he'd sometimes gaze longingly at women's clothing in store windows. The sadness that seemed to cling to him like a second skin. "Oh, honey," she said softly, setting down her mug to take both of Nikolai's hands in hers. "Thank you for trusting me with this. You're so brave." Nikolai's eyes welled with tears. "You don't think I'm a freak?" "Absolutely not," Joanna said firmly. "You're my friend, and I love you. This doesn't change that. If anything, I'm honored that you felt safe enough to share this with me." The relief on Nikolai's face was palpable. He sagged against the couch as if a great weight had been lifted from his shoulders. "I've been so scared," he admitted. "I didn't know how to tell anyone, or even if I should, but it's been eating me up inside." Joanna squeezed his hands. "Well, you're not alone anymore," she assured him. "We'll figure this out together, okay? Whatever you need, I'm here for you." Nikolai nodded, a small, tentative smile tugging at the corners of his mouth. "Thank you," he whispered. They talked long into the night, Nikolai sharing feelings and experiences he'd kept bottled up for years. Joanna listened attentively, offering support and asking gentle questions to help Nikolai explore his identity. As the first light of dawn began to creep through the windows, Joanna had an idea. "Hey," she said, sitting up straighter. "I have some clothes that might fit you. Would you like to try them on?" Nikolai's eyes widened, a mix of excitement and trepidation crossing his face. I don't know," he said hesitantly. "What if I look ridiculous?" Joanna shook her head firmly. "You won't," she assured him. "And even if you did, who cares? This is about you feeling comfortable in your own skin. No judgment here. I promise." After a moment's hesitation, Nikolai nodded. "Okay," he said softly. "I'd like that." Joanna grinned and bounced to her feet. "Great, give me a few minutes to put something together." She disappeared into her bedroom, emerging a short while later with an armful of clothes. "I think these might work," she said, laying them out on the couch. "We're pretty close in size, so they should fit okay." Nikolai reached out, running his fingers over the soft fabric of a flowing skirt. His touch was reverent, as if he couldn't quite believe this was happening. "Do you want me to help, or would you prefer some privacy?" Joanna asked gently. Nikolai looked up, vulnerability written across his features. Would you mind helping?" he asked hesitantly. "I'm not sure I know where to start." "Of course," Joanna said warmly. "Let's start with the basics, okay?" Over the next hour, Joanna guided Nikolai through the process of transforming his appearance. They started with undergarments, Joanna tactfully turning away to give Nikolai some privacy as he changed. Next came a pair of black tights, which Nikolai struggled with at first, unused to the delicate material. Joanna showed him how to carefully roll them up his legs, smoothing out any wrinkles. The skirt came next, a deep burgundy that swirled around Nikolai's knees. Joanna helped him tuck in a soft cream-colored blouse, adjusting the fit to accentuate the curves of his body. As Nikolai caught sight of himself in the mirror, his breath caught in his throat. Even without makeup or a wig, the transformation was striking. The clothes seemed to unlock something within him, allowing a hidden part of his soul to shine through. "How does it feel?" Joanna asked softly, standing behind him. Nikolai's eyes were wide, filled with wonder. "It feel right," he whispered. "Like I'm finally seeing myself for the first time." Joanna smiled, squeezing his shoulder. "You look beautiful," she said sincerely, "but we're not done yet. How do you feel about a little makeup?" Nikolai nodded eagerly, and Joanna led him to her vanity. She started with a light foundation, explaining each step as she went. Nikolai listened intently, soaking up the knowledge like a sponge. As Joanna applied a soft pink lipstick, Nikolai spoke. "I've been thinking," he said hesitantly, "about names." Joanna paused, meeting his eyes in the mirror. "Oh?" Nikolai nodded. I think I'd like to be called Kelly," he said, the name coming out barely above a whisper. Joanna's face broke into a warm smile. "Kelly," she repeated. "It suits you beautifully." As she put the finishing touches on the makeup, Joanna couldn't help but marvel at the transformation. It wasn't just the physical changes, though those were significant. There was a light in Kelly's eyes that Joanna had never seen before, a joy and peace that seemed to radiate from within. "Okay," Joanna said, setting down the makeup brush. "Are you ready to see?" Kelly nodded, taking a deep breath. Joanna turned her chair to face the full-length mirror on the back of the door. The gasp that escaped Kelly's lips was one of pure wonder. She stood slowly, moving closer to the mirror as if in a trance. Her hands trembled as she touched her face, tracing the contours that the makeup had subtly enhanced. Is that really me?" Kelly whispered, her voice thick with emotion. Joanna came to stand beside her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders. "That's you, Kelly," she said softly. "The real you." Kelly turned, burying her face in Joanna's shoulder as tears began to fall. But these weren't tears of shame or fear. They were tears of relief, of joy, of finally feeling whole. "Thank you," Kelly murmured, her words muffled against Joanna's shirt. "Thank you for helping me find myself." Joanna held her friend close, her own eyes misting over. "You've always been you, Kelly," she said. "I'm just glad I could help you see it." As the sun rose fully, painting the room in warm golden light, Kelly pulled back, wiping her eyes carefully to avoid smudging her makeup. "What happens now?" she asked, a hint of uncertainty creeping back into her voice. Joanna took Kelly's hands in hers, giving them a reassuring squeeze. "Now, we take things one step at a time," she said. "This is just the beginning of your journey, Kelly. But you won't have to walk it alone. I'll be right here beside you, every step of the way." Kelly nodded, a small smile playing at the corners of her lips. "I think I'm ready," she said, her voice growing stronger. "Ready to be me." Joanna grinned, pulling Kelly into another hug. "Then let's get started," she said. "The world is waiting to meet the real you, Kelly. And trust me, they're going to love you just as much as I do." As they stood there, bathed in the morning light, both women felt the weight of the moment. It was an ending and a beginning, the close of one chapter and the opening of another. For Kelly, it was the first day of a life lived authentically, free from the constraints that had held her back for so long. And for Joanna, it was the beginning of a new adventure, supporting her friend as she stepped into her true self. There would be challenges ahead, no doubt, but in that moment, surrounded by the glow of newfound truth and the warmth of unconditional friendship. Anything seemed possible. Kelly took a deep breath, squaring her shoulders as she looked at her reflection one more time. "Okay," she said, her voice filled with a determination. "I'm ready to face the world." Joanna nodded, a proud smile lighting up her face. "Then let's go show the world who you really are, Kelly. It's time for your debut." Hand in hand, the two women walked towards the door, ready to step into the sunlight and embrace the new day and the new life that awaited them. In the weeks that followed, Joanna became Kelly's steadfast guide and ally in her journey of self-discovery. They spent countless evenings exploring different styles of clothing, experimenting with makeup techniques, and discussing the myriad aspects of transitioning. Kelly's confidence grew with each passing day. The sadness that had once hung over her like a cloud began to lift, replaced by a quiet joy that seemed to radiate from within. She still had moments of doubt and fear, but Joanna was always there to offer reassurance and support. One particularly memorable evening found them sprawled on Joanna's living room floor, surrounded by a sea of fashion magazines and makeup tutorials. Kelly was carefully applying eyeliner, her tongue poking out in concentration as she followed the instructions in a YouTube video. "I never realized how much work goes into this," Kelly remarked, laughing as she smudged the line for the third time. "How do you make it look so easy?" Joanna grinned, looking up from the magazine she was flipping through. "Years of practice," she said, "and a lot of trial and error. You should have seen me when I first started wearing makeup. I looked like a raccoon most days." Kelly giggled, the sound light and carefree in a way that still surprised her sometimes. "Well, at least I have a good teacher," she said, shooting Joanna a grateful smile. As the weeks turned into months, Kelly began to take small steps towards living as her true self outside the safety of Joanna's apartment. It started with simple things, like wearing clear nail polish to work or incorporating more feminine accessories into her wardrobe. The first time Kelly wore earrings to the restaurant, she was a bundle of nerves. But aside from a few curious glances, no one seemed to pay much attention. By the end of her shift, Kelly was floating on air, buoyed by the simple act of expressing herself authentically. Joanna watched her friend's transformation with a mix of pride and awe. She'd always known there was something special about Nikolai, but seeing Kelly emerge was like watching a butterfly break free from its chrysalis. Of course, not everything was smooth sailing. There were difficult conversations with family members, some of whom struggled to understand Kelly's journey. There were moments of dysphoria that left Kelly feeling raw and vulnerable. And there was the constant challenge of navigating a world that wasn't always kind to those who dared to be different. But through it all, Joanna remained Kelly's rock. She was there to dry tears after a particularly hurtful comment from a stranger. She was there to celebrate every milestone, no matter how small. And she was there to remind Kelly of how far she'd come when the road ahead seemed daunting. One crisp autumn evening, as they walked home from a successful shopping trip, Kelly suddenly stopped in her tracks. Joanna turned, concern etched on her face. "What's wrong?" she asked. Kelly shook her head, her eyes shining with unshed tears. "Nothing's wrong," she said softly. I never thought I could be this happy, this comfortable in my own skin, and it's all because of you, Joanna." Joanna felt her own eyes welling up. She pulled Kelly into a fierce hug, not caring about the curious glances from passers-by. "You did all the hard work, Kelly," she said. "I just held the flashlight while you found your way." As they pulled apart, Kelly wiped her eyes, careful not to smudge her mascara. "Still," she insisted, "I don't know where I'd be without you. You've been my guardian angel through all of this." Joanna laughed, linking her arm through Kelly's as they resumed their walk. "Guardian angel, huh? I like the sound of that. Does it come with wings?" Kelly grinned, bumping Joanna's shoulder playfully. "If anyone deserves wings, it's you." As they continued down the street, arm in arm, both women felt a sense of peace settle over them. The journey was far from over, but they knew they could face whatever challenges lay ahead as long as they had each other. The setting sun painted the sky in shades of pink and gold, casting a warm glow over the city. It felt like a promise of brighter days to come, of a future where Kelly could live fully and freely as herself. And as they turned the corner towards home, Kelly realized something profound. She wasn't just surviving anymore, existing day to day in a body that felt wrong. She was living, truly living for the first time in her life. With Joanna by her side, and a world of possibilities stretching out before her, Kelly knew that the best was yet to come. She was ready to embrace her true self, to live authentically and unapologetically. And she was profoundly grateful for the friend who had helped her find the courage to do so. As they reached Joanna's apartment building, Kelly paused, taking a moment to appreciate how far she'd come. From the scared, confused person she'd been just a few months ago to the confident woman she was becoming, the transformation was nothing short of miraculous. "Thank you," Kelly said softly, turning to face Joanna, "for everything." Joanna smiled, her eyes shining with affection. "You don't have to keep thanking me," she said, "but you're welcome. Always." The weeks that followed were a blur of fabrics, colors, and styles, as Kelly dove headfirst into discovering her personal fashion. Joanna became her trusted confidant, offering guidance and encouragement every step of the way. Together, they spent countless hours in front of the mirror, transforming Kelly's appearance, and in the process, unlocking a new world of self-expression. Thanks for watching! The rest won't be viewable on YouTube, so check out Patreon if you want more.